Good morning, RTD. It's my pleasure to be with you this morning. My name is Deborah Johnson. I have the pleasure of serving as the General Manager and Chief Executive Officer here at the Regional Transportation District. And it gives me great pleasure to be sitting amongst these dynamic leaders this morning as we engage momentarily in a panel discussion about the resilience and reinvention of women shaping the future of transportation. But I want to qualify that and be more specific. We're going to talk about public transportation because we as a collective are people moving people, and recognizing this beautifully wrapped bus behind us, it is important to note the impact of women in this transit industry. I'm going to start out and ground us in the discussion a little bit just in the face of adversity, talking about leadership. As women, we often are underrepresented, but we show up and show out oftentimes. And there's something innate about that because we are the givers of life and we have an innate ability typically to help others. The reason why I'm starting with these comments is due to the fact when you look at the transit industry, 55% of transit customers, according to the American Public Transportation Association, are women. If you look at the top 40 transit agencies within these United States, according to the Urban Institute's report in 2024, there's only 7 women that share the same role that I have, and I'm one of those 7. And while we look at transit agencies across the country and we think about the representation of the women that comprise the agency, it's only 37%. And it gets much smaller when you look at women in positions of leadership. Now, I want to be clear. One does not have to be in a role to exude leadership competencies. Any of us could travel around our respective areas and go to a playground and determine who's the leader on the playground. So it's not by title alone. It's about how you show up, about how you stand in your truth, and about how you can be vulnerable. And the reason I talk about vulnerability, because in order to lead, you have to be vulnerable because you need to be courageous. And you can't be courageous without having a sense of vulnerability because you never know what's on the other side. I speak to this from a place recognizing that I happen to be the first woman to ever run RTD. Coming into this organization back in the height of the pandemic in 2020, it was a difficult environment. I am a people person. When I would go out to divisions, I was wearing a mask. I couldn't make eye contact. It was hard to read those nonverbal cues, leveraging emotional intelligence and things of the like. But we were all able to persevere, and that gets back to the resilience one needs. I'm certain a lot of us can identify being in a room with other men, and I am not gender bashing, I'm providing insight into customary environments just in our spaces, hence that's why I started with the statistics, that oftentimes you may say something and your comment goes unnoticed until it's amplified by someone else. But I am one that is a firm believer that you have to show up and show out, not in a disrespectful way, but in a way in which your voice can be heard. And it's incumbent upon us because you never know who is watching. As I was reflecting on this panel, I was thinking about the history of women in American society. And in one instance, it saddened me that I was alive and well when women could first get credit cards by virtue of the Equal Credit Act that came to fruition in the latter part of October of 1974. Women, even though they held a job, could not have a credit card, go to a banking institution. It didn't even matter if they worked. They would have to have their husband's name on said account. And if they were unmarried, they would have to have a male figure, either a father or a brother. And when you think about that, that wasn't that long ago. We're talking about nearly 52 years ago. And so I say to each and every one of you, be resolute when you're sitting in a room and you're saying something. Don't shy away because the impact you will make will have a grave one on someone else who is watching. And we all know that we're imperfectly perfect. We're human beings that have challenges each and every day. We need to extend each other grace, show a little humility, and recognize that we're all in this together because as a collective, we are better together. And so, as we delve into this discussion, we're going to actually have a dialogue, and you will soon see that you are not alone, that we have more similarities than we do differences, whether you identify as a male, female, binary, we are collective as human beings, and that's what's incredibly important. But we can't lose sight of the trials and tribulations and the challenges that we have overcome to get us to this place today. So what I'm going to do is give each of the panelists an opportunity to identify themselves, and I'd like them to share what their role is in the agency and how long they have been here. And once we're all grounded in the panel, then we'll engage in the discussion. So with that, I will yield the floor to my panelists to my left.
Hello, I am Jessica Guardia. I have been at RTD for almost 5 years in July. I've been in transportation for about 9 years.
Hello, my name is Melissa McDowell. I am the Director of Talent and Organizational Development, and I have been at RTD a little over 3.5 years now.
Good morning. My name is Kelly Irving. I'm the director of the Civil Rights Division, and I am working on day number 8. Yes.
Thank you for that, Kelly. And I know it's day number 8, but you are no novice to the public sector and let alone public transportation.
True.
And so right now, in one word, you can pass the mic back around. How would you sum up your leadership journey in just one word?
Mobile.
Ooh, one word. I would say perseverance.
I'm just going to add that I'm in the cybersecurity department, cybersecurity manager, architecture, and engineering. I missed that earlier, but my one word would be grit.
Grit?
Grit.
All right. And for me, it would be agility. And as you can see, there's different words that are descriptive of our leadership, but I believe there's a nexus with all of it, right? Because as you listen to these introductions, I invite you to notice the diversity of the pathways. We're talking about cybersecurity. There's Melissa McDowell from an educational vantage point, and Kelly as a career public servant in reference to the terms of equity. And so as we think about that holistically and converging upon this one space being the Regional Transportation District, I'd like to remind us all that resilience shows up in many, many different forms. And with that, I want to ask the first question of the panel. We're in a live, active operating division. This just adds a little color to our conversation, recognizing perseverance is paramount to anything that we do. And as I said, agility and flexibility. Can you share a moment in your career when resilience was required of you?
Yes. So I had recently moved into the cybersecurity space. I was probably about 7 months into this career, and I ended up going overseas, Cambodia, Thailand, and Singapore, and ended up coming back very, very sick. I ended up getting a debilitating disease. I couldn't walk. I was in a wheelchair. I had all my joints inflamed. And so, but I was in this space of I one, felt a little bit like an imposter moving into cybersecurity, but I had this drive and I just know I need to keep going. And I was literally working with my laptop with one hand because my left hand was not working. I mean, there'd be days where I wouldn't even get out of bed, but I mean, one of the biggest things that I really held on to is that this is something that I enjoy and that I love. And when I was looking at what I was going through, it's actually what propelled me, and I was in a fresh new space of a career, and um, yeah, I mean, I kept going and I kept moving, and so I was single at the time, so I needed to pay for my bills, and that was just a really big defining moment for me when it came to just being resilient and pushing through.
Uh, what moment particularly did you find most challenging?
Um, I mean, I think the biggest thing is I went from a late 20-year-old person to like the age of 90 in a matter of 2 weeks. To just see my body break down when I was super healthy. I mean, I was a competitive dancer. I was hiking. I was always moving, and to really stretch me mentally of what's going on with my reality of my body. And you know, you really kind of have to tap into different parts of your mind, different things that can really just push you through, and not really knowing what's going on. I mean, there was a couple of months where the doctors didn't understand what was going on. I was doing all these tests. So, yeah.
Thank you very much
Mhm.
for being vulnerable and sharing that with us, because it's mind over matter.
Absolutely.
Oftentimes we can let that block our ability, because generally when we think we can't do something, we convince ourselves of that. And oftentimes, while it may seem cliche, you have to believe it to achieve it. And if you're laser like focused on that, you can bring whatever obstacle to fruition in the sense of overcoming it. So kudos to you. Thank you for sharing your
Mhm.
story. Kelly, let's go to you. Recognizing that you're on day 8 here at the Regional Transportation District, moving to the Mile High City, being a native Southern Californian,
Mhm.
can you share with us what it means to you in relationship to resilience, knowing that you've packed up and you've moved here, but I also know that you've, worked and lived in Louisiana, and you've been in Houston, and you've
Mhm.
been on the Eastern Seaboard. So recognizing that public transportation, wherever life takes you, was the former tagline of APTA back in the 90s, I think it is more or less befitting for you to address what that means in your space.
Thank you, GM Deborah Johnson. Let me share. I describe my leadership as being mobile. And what I mean by mobile, I am talking about versatility and I'm talking about adaptability. Being a leader in this space of regulatory compliance, moving from Southern California to other regional major metropolitan areas within this United States, to be resilient, I've had to, particularly in the recent past, because of changes, regulatory changes, government changes at the federal level, I've had to be able to pivot. My leadership is not just one on one plane. I had to figure out how to take my experiences that I've garnered over the years in this space of not just public service, but specifically in transit, in order to deliver a strong program, a strong leadership, and a strong encouragement and empowerment of those that I lead. That there is resiliency from a West Coast, East Coast, Gulf Coast, and I like to think of being tri-coastal, okay? With that being said, the resilience comes in being able to deal with the adversity and being able to pivot to be able to deliver something quality to not only your program, but to the people that you work with as your work family. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I'm going to go to Melissa now. Recognizing we're talking about pivoting and resiliency. I can recall when you started here at this organization, Melissa, and we had a conversation recognizing that the learning and development division was more or less decimated just by virtue of decisions that it made prior to me coming into the organization, prior to you. And when we think about where we are at this juncture, gives me a sense of pride in looking out into the audience and seeing members of your team and what has been done. Can you share with us your perspective relative to resilience and share an example that you feel germane to this discussion relative to where you sit?
Yes, thank you for that question. Yeah, so when I first got here, and even during the interview process for my role, it was shared with me that, essentially I would be building up the department from the ground. And I knew that coming in. And so it made me a little bit nervous because I didn't know what to expect. In addition to it being a new job, building a new department, it was also my first time in transit. So I transitioned from academia to transportation. And so there were a lot of unknowns. But sometimes you have to flip the script in your mind when you feel like you're facing a challenge in adversity. You have to say to yourself, okay, am I going to catastrophize this moment and say, I have no resources, no files to work from, I don't know what I'm walking into? Or are you going to say, this is an opportunity, this is a challenge where I actually will get to show my skills and my ability and all the experience that I've had before coming to this point. And so that's what I had to do. In addition to that, when I first started, it was just me for the first 6 months, but I have a fabulous team, some of which are here today. We have Mandy Singleton, we have Aaron Grover, and Vivian Morales, and Vivian's picture is right behind us on the bus. Um, and I couldn't do any of it without them. I mean, we are a team and we work together, and they have amazing minds and amazing skills. And, even to this day, even 3.5 years in, there are still things that we're developing and growing. And I think that they also have the same mindset is, okay, we have a challenge before us, but what are we going to do to make it happen?
Thank you for that. As we talk about pivoting, and just by virtue of what I've heard from the three of you thus far, mobility, overcoming obstacles, reinventing oneself, transitioning from one, I would say, sector to another, that basically resonates with me because being in this industry for 30 plus years, oftentimes people don't set out saying, I want to work in the public transportation sector. We kind of fall into it. And with that as a backdrop, I know personally I was on this trajectory where I wanted to go to law school and I wanted to, change the world and do a myriad of things. And through various avenues, I discovered that I could still do that, but in a different way. And so recognizing that aspect of it all, careers in transportation are rarely linear. And as you all know, I often use the phrase lean in, and it's because it's one of my favorite books that was written by Sheryl Sandberg, the former chief operating officer of Facebook. And the reason why I talk about leaning in and the nexus with this topic is that when we're trying to ascend and do various things, it's never like, straight up to the top. It's not on a parallel track. Sometimes it's very analogous to a jungle gym. We may have to step to the left, step to the back, so we can get to the top of the jungle gym. And I think all of us can remember what that was like when we were kids. So recognizing that, as we think about pivoting and how you have fallen into transportation, whether planned or expected, let's talk more about something that you have done whereby you've reinvented yourself. So Kelly, why don't we start down with you?
Thank you for that question. In reinventing myself, I knew early on as a young person growing up, because of the responsibility that my parents gave me, that I wanted to go into public administration. So it was by design that I wanted to study the science of running some type of municipality and giving back to the community, because that is part of who I am. It is part of what the conversation was at the dinner table, to give back, to be a responsible citizen. Reinventing myself, I can think about understand my career has been based on compliance or regulatory interpreting some type of law that I have now the responsibility of actually making sure that we're following the rules. Whenever there's major policy change, being from California in the late 1990s, there was a major push. I'm a strong advocate for small business utilization. There was a proposition that was passed at the state level that um, forced the state of California to only look at race and gender neutral principles in order to engage individuals for public contract at the state level. But it had an impact on local level as well. So that was a pivot change because the mindset was to advocate for minority and women business enterprises, which I then had to be more inclusive. And there is the onset of studying diversity, equity, and inclusion. And with that being said, reinventing, each time there's a policy change, there's a requirement to look at who you are and what you're delivering to the public to reinvent your approach in order to be effective.
How did that shift your impact on the confidence that you had within yourself relative to the skills that you possessed?
The skills that in this industry that we operate, Gisa, Tamika, Gabe, and you as our leader, we have to understand we have the KSAs, the knowledge, skills, and abilities. Our attitude on how we approach those, because we know our content and how we deliver it in order to get those that may not be on board with us, we become extreme negotiators, okay? Because we have to influence people to now begin to think in a compliance mindset, but without us forcing the policing on them. So with that, it is really going deep into, you talked about grit. Part of you, who you are is grit. Your grind has to be about your knowledge. And you have to figure out how to influence people to get on board with you. So you become a salesperson of sorts because you're a major JC, you're going to be a major negotiator. That's what we claim for you. Okay? With that being said, that's how you reinvent yourself. You really have to go deep into your gut and your grind, but it's really about what's in your heart.
Thank you for that, Kelly. And we're going to go to Jessica, recognizing you called out the grit and the grind. And so, as we say with the Gigi aspect of it all, Jessica, tell us what was required within you to reinvent yourself, especially in light of the story that you shared at the onset of this panel discussion.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. I feel like, that was a very difficult time for me. One, I mentioned I was new into cybersecurity. I formerly had been an IT auditor. I had a very strong risk and compliance background, and I was feeling just a little bit more bored with my job. I wanted to get more technically savvy. I was really fascinated by the cybersecurity space. I wanted to leap into something new. And so it required a lot of work, to say the least. I would say that I had a coworker who, I had expressed I was very interested in cybersecurity. He invited me to go to some networking events. So I started going to networking events. And then I had also started, I had every other Friday off at my current job. So I was mentoring with a IT manager and learning all the ins and outs of systems, cybersecurity stuff, how things work. I was kind of really getting into the grit of how technology works, So I eventually started interviewing. I got a lot of no's. I didn't have the experience behind me. I was doing everything I could to learn about cybersecurity, and so I ended up interviewing at one place. They really appreciated the fact that I was doing all these things outside of my own job on my days off, that I was learning about the field, and they were willing to mentor me and take me under their wing. Um, and then just to even, continue that story, it's, I did eventually get really sick as well, 6 months into that, right after taking a certification. Um, but yeah, I mean, I really had to reinvent myself as a person, and what my dreams and desires were. And I took a pay cut to take that job as well. So I think there's a lot of risks that can be involved when you're reinventing, you're learning something new, and there's sort of a grace and persistence and just a drive that can kind of come out when you're passionate about something. So
I qualify that as courage, getting back to the vulnerability aspect and
mhm.
taking risk, because if you don't allow yourself to be vulnerable, you don't know what's on the other side. And that's risky in all of that. With that being said, as we talk about what you did on your off days so you could basically garner additional insight in how you could be successful in this pivot, what would you say were the competencies and or skills that you relied on to push you through that pivoting experience?
I mean, I think a big piece of it was curiosity. I really wanted to learn the technical ins and outs of how does an actor get into the environment? Like, what are they actually compromising? There was just this big drive of curiosity, and I think too, just having those people that were with me to teach me and feed that mind that I had. So,
All right, thank you.
thank
We'll
you.
go to Melissa because I like that segue, feeding the mind, considering what you do here at the organization. And when we talk about feeding the mind and being able to pivot, and you talked about that early on coming from academia, so we'll take you in a little different direction as we thinking about feeding the mind. Coming from academia, coming here, this may seem a little oxymoronic, but I'm going to ask you, what did you have to unlearn?
That's a great question. So, what I had to unlearn is the very specific process of teaching in academia, of working in academia, which is a lot more formal. And in this environment and in the environment of many other organizations, the focus is really more on upskilling, reskilling, preparing people for their next move and their next career within RTD. And so I had to unlearn that everything is not going to be step one, step two, step three. I really had to learn more about transit, honestly. I consider myself a lifelong learner, and I'm not afraid to ask questions. One of the things that I think I'm really good at, and that I knew that I was going to have to focus on when I started in my role, was I was going to have to meet people and build relationships. And that is a practice that really took me a long time to do, because while I'm sitting up here talking to you now, I am more of an introvert, but I have learned throughout my career how to be extroverted when I need to be. Um, and so, I began to meet people, not just on the business side of the agency, but also on the operations side of the agency. And I would ask questions, why does a bus operator walk around the bus before they start their route? What are they doing? What are they looking for? Why is that important? And then one of the first opportunities that I have is that RTD participates in Enomax. And so in leading that program, we had the opportunity to travel to other transit agencies. And I think that that was one of the most beneficial things, because I got to see behind the scenes, not only how RTD works and runs, but how other transit systems in other cities run as well. And so in terms of reinventing myself and unlearning, I really had to look at things differently and what was needed here at RTD versus what I was used to, having a very formal classroom, having students and, a syllabus and things like that. And a lot of those skills are full, while a lot of those skills are still helpful in what we do here at RTD, I had to realize that I was going to have to adjust my thinking and learn new skills about workforce development.
All right, well, thank you. And just to educate our listeners, Max, the Foundation is a think tank in Washington, D.C. that focuses on transportation policy. And MAX, as the acronym, is the Multi-Agency Exchange Program. And RTD was one of the early participants when the program started in the summer of 2012. So thank you for that, Melissa. As we talk about um, transportation and resiliency, and it's evolving quite naturally as we have this bus behind us. While this is a diesel bus that sits behind us, we look at alternatively fueled vehicles now in the public transportation space where you can have diesel hybrid, you could have hydrogen fuel cell, battery electric buses, and things of the like. And the reason I qualify that is because how we move people to and fro has evolved from a horse-drawn carriage now to alternatively fueled vehicles. And we think about that technology as reinventing itself. What have you all done to reinvent yourself in this space as leaders, just in a general sense? Because when we talk about transportation policy, like you alluded to, Kelly, with the responses to your questions, without getting into partisan politics, but as we look at where we are as a country, and quite naturally, there's different viewpoints relative to transportation delivery in the public realm of transit and the funding sources and things of the like. And then we talk about cybersecurity and, you know, intelligent transportation systems, and then talking about learning, leveraging artificial intelligence. How do we go about as individuals when we're in these changing environments being adaptive, or the reinvention aspect of who we are to lead in these spaces? So Jessica, I'll hand off to you.
Yeah, I mean, especially in cybersecurity, as it relates to AI, one of the biggest things that we're always trying to stay up against is, our threat actors breaking in. And with AI, it makes things more advanced. They're able to craft better emails through this. They're able to quickly get through environments. And so a lot of times what happens with us and our team is we're always trying to get ahead of what they're going to think of, what they're doing. We're always working on enforcing our perimeter defenses. And so we have to be adaptable. We have to be flexible. We have to move with that threat landscape, how they're framing those attacks. And sometimes that takes time, because most things with RTD, I mean, we have not only just cybersecurity, we have our own way of doing things, but we have an IT department, we have stakeholders that we're impacting. So we also have to consider the full audience. And so yeah, we have to work up against that.
And as it relates to you as an individual being a leader, how would you qualify your leadership in the face of these times relative to competencies you think you may need to be successful in a changing environment?
Yeah, I mean, I really feel like you have to, as problems come up, you thought it was one way in terms of solving it, similarly to how we've put up, we've gone in and done a configuration to make something stronger. But then we learn, oh gosh, they were able to compromise that. So a lot of times you look at a problem and you have to be open-minded about it. You have to think ahead of, how are they attacking it now? So you really have to hone in on being able to be open-minded, be able to problem solve, and then also just leveraging your teammates, because they also have those skill sets that you can also bring into the table as well.
Yeah, I like that, because as I said before, we're better together and we don't know everything. So we can complement each other just by virtue of maybe having uh, more aptitude in certain disciplines, whereas another individual may have some learning and growth opportunities, right? But when we can lean into that and understand that this doesn't make me look as if I am not competent in this area. It's basically strengthening the ability to work in collaboration for the betterment of the agency as a whole. So thank you for sharing that. Melissa, let's go to you. Speaking about the whole aspect of, you know, learning and development and work shifts in the sense of when I say work shifts, meaning shifting how we're doing work, but to the point that you raised about learning and development and not being this is step one, this is step two, but being more flexible and agile. How has reinvention come into play from your perspective, whether in your current role here or just in the general overview of your leadership journey?
So when I think about reinvention in that way, the world is ever changing. There's constantly new things that are happening, new technologies that are coming out. You mentioned policies, sometimes that, are unexpected that we immediately have to address. And I think that we just have to continue to be flexible. AI is a big thing right now. I know that Mandy on our team has been exploring that. It's also a conversation that comes up a lot in learning and development. And that's when you sort of have to step back and say, okay, this might be an area that I'm not skilled in or that I don't know about, but what am I going to do to learn it? And if there are other people around me who are not skilled in it or unable to teach me, what can I do? And so that's something that I feel like when these changes come, it's a choice, and we have to be resilient, and we have to, as you mentioned, Ms. Johnson, that we have to lean into those things and start to explore. And Jessica mentioned curiosity, being curious, and just Google a topic. I've also been recently looking at AI. I was delighted to see when here at RTD we had a policy come out on AI, because it really helped me shift and focus how, sort of what the expectations are of how we use it here. And yeah, it's something that we have to lean into. I'm going to age myself here, but when I was graduating high school, which was in 1994, the big thing was computers are going to take everybody's job, right? um, and it was just like this looming thing that was constantly talked about, and I didn't have a computer, and I was really worried about it when I went to college. And I want to say even my first year in college, we didn't have, really computers that students could use, and then my sophomore year, we finally got like a computer lab. But it was one of those things where if you want to stay relevant, if you want to stay on top of your skill sets, you're going to have to push yourself to learn those things. And nowadays we have so many resources with the internet and now AI. You can literally type in what it is that you want to learn about. And here at RTD, we also have professional development funds for employees, and so they can take advantage of that to take a class or participate in a workshop. So yeah, it's something that we really have to exercise our learning muscles in, and not be afraid to learn something new, because it will ultimately benefit you, your team, and the agency at the end.
Thank you for your response. I'm over here chuckling and made eye contact with Kelly. You talking about computers. When I went to college, I took a Smith Corona typewriter. So, okay, aging yourself. So, with that, Miss Irving, what about you? How did you reinvent yourself? Because I'm certain you had a typewriter as well, since I know
did.
we're, in that same little bracket there.
I did. I had the typewriter and the encyclopedias. Okay.
Exactly, the encyclopedia, and we had to wait.
Forget about typing it in.
That's what I'm saying. Whatever you had, you went back to that Encyclopedia Britannica, and you had to wait till that little salesman came around with the new shift of books the next year. And so your
Absolutely.
information was stale.
Right.
But that's what
absolutely.
you call pivoting, right?
Pivoting.
All right.
With that, I want to say that you mentioned alternative energy sources that we run our system, whether or not it's our buses or our light rail electrification. In my leadership growth, my reinvention and my aha moment was really based off of people. With that, I wanted to take the time to really get into who's accomplishing the work. It's really, yeah, sometimes it's computers, but somebody has to put that information into the computer. With that being said, I wanted to reinvent myself as a leader to be more cognizant of my EQ, not just my IQ. Empathy is critically important when you have to have work accomplished through people. And what I mean is, I can't, I cannot drive one of these buses, although I would want to, and I'm open to be challenged, okay? I cannot be an operator on the light rail. But what I can do is I can look that person in their eyes and understand who they are as not only an employee, but more important, as part of the team, the person that comes to work. Because our goal is to get you to go home at night. And so that is part of my reinvention in the work that I do as a leader, is to also understand that my leadership is not always pulling, sometimes it's pushing. But you have to be able to assess the environment in which you're working, be able to pivot. Some of your staff as a leader, I'm speaking from a leader's perspective, are more mature than others. And what I have learned over those years of moving to different regional differences throughout this nation, I have to relearn the culture. And that's where you have the IQ, but you got to know the EQ, being able to go into different regions and appreciate that different regions have different cultural norms, and that there has been important for me as a leader in my space.
Yeah, thank you for that. We're going to transition a little bit, and I think your response is the perfect segue to that because we are all people and we're imperfectly perfect. No one's better than anybody else. I mean, we all have different roles to play, but that doesn't define who we are. Oftentimes, it's our life journeys that define who we are because we all have a story of which no one knows anything about. So we have to ensure that we extend grace to one another because that's who helps shapes us. I'll tell you a quick story. I remember when I moved to DC back in the early 2000s. I believe it was the latter part of 2002, and I went to take a position at the Washington Metropolitan Transportation Authority. And I got there, and it was a different world in the sense that being at a transit agency that was, I would say, founded upon the premise of having an enabling compact by Congress. And it served multiple states, i.e., Northern Virginia, Maryland, and the District of Columbia. There was no governing state that oversaw it. And what was interesting is we adhered to FOIA, being the Federal Open Information Act. Coming from the Bay Area at that time, there was no public engagement process. And so the role that I had in that agency was a new role. I was the director of project communications. And I was like, what's the public comment period? I had nicknames. I was known as Bougie Boo and Cali Girl because I had this expectation, having come from the Bay Area where we had public comment in some meetings that would go on for 3 or 4 hours, and people would come with a boombox and basically perform their public comment. And there was the naked guy out of Berkeley that only wore a backpack and sandals. So coming into this environment, you had to adapt and adjust, but recognize life experiences. The reason why I give you that colorful narrative is because nowhere else would I've ever imagined myself to be Bougie Boo, but in DC I did, because I didn't say Merlin, I said Maryland. And I was confused by two of my colleagues whose names were Mary and Murray. But I had a member of my staff who would say Murray for Mary, and I was like, I don't know what you're talking about. Lived experiences, being adaptable, and going into where you believe that you can be a contributor, but recognizing that we have differences. So with that as the segue, how have you navigated different environments and shown up to be your true authentic self, in the sense of not losing a sense of self, but being an actual contributor? So who wants to go? Eeny, meeny, miny, mo. Okay. Melissa's gonna go.
Yeah, so I think for a long time in my career, I was scared to show up as myself, my full self. And, we all have different personalities and thoughts and how we see the world, and attitudes and personalities. And because I often worked in environments that were not really dominated by women, sometimes I would just assume that I should, shrink myself a little bit, or not laugh too not loud, or not tell a joke and things like that. But the reality was that no one else was trying to silence me or make myself smaller. I was doing that. I was making assumptions, um, that were not really there. And so, in reading books, in reading Lean In, and just kind of like other self-help books, and having mentors who were very confident in spaces, I slowly learned how to take up space and to be myself and come and be my full self. And it always ended, whenever I did that, it always worked out better. And I think that people around me in rooms also appreciated me coming as, showing up as my full self in spaces.
Thank you for sharing that, because you made me think of something as I was talking about my WMATA example. I was having an issue where people were making assumptions about different things and being your true self. And I remember I was speaking to my father, and he said, "Baby, I don't have any sons, but I'm going to tell you, you need to be a man." And I was like, "Okay, Daddy, well, first, I'm not sure that's going to happen," but I understood the message, because not trying to badger our male counterparts, but it is showing up in that room. Sit in the front seat, don't sit around the perimeter, stand in your truth, be seen. And it doesn't mean that I had to dress like a man in order to be a man, but it was that confidence level, and not basically feel as if I needed to shrink myself. And I'm no shrinking violet by any stretch of the imagination, but as I go back and look at my younger self, I may have not been as forthright. I stood up for myself, but that's very important. So I say that to all the young girls and women: be bold, be true, and be your best self, because there's no one other than you that can do that. And be that individual that lives out loud and in color and takes up space in a good way. So, with that, Kelly, we're going to segue to you really quickly, and you can share with us about your lived experience and how you've navigated that within your career.
Be true to thyself. I cannot stress that enough. Now, at some point in your life, you're going to figure out what that really means. You're right. Back in the day, I was just sharing with Dr. Melissa and Miss Jessica. Our guidebook to our dress was Dress for Success. And you would see a female in a pinstripe suit with a white shirt and a tie. That was the uniform. If you wanted to make it in America and you wanted to be considered successful, that was going to be your wardrobe. I said, look at us today. Look at us today.
Woohoo!
Yay! We are breaking through, girls. We're kicking them out, okay? Because we're coming and we're being authentic to ourselves. Be true to thyself. Know your value. And sometimes knowing your value is an exercise and it's evolving. You have to ask yourself when you look in the mirror, who am I? Who am I? What makes me me? Okay? We talked about the knowledge, the skills, and the abilities. We got that. But how are we going to come and be true to thyself? So, with that being said, when I elected in my life to cast the net wide and to move away from Southern California and to begin to take my show on the road, because I'm Kelly Irving, CEO of Kelly Irving, okay? I decided what I would do. I went to the South and I went to Louisiana, Baton Rouge, Louisiana. And what I discovered, that there were women going to work in beautiful dresses in color, pastel colors. Oh my God, really? And I said, that was a breakthrough for me, that I could come and be the feminine me and sit at the round table and have a voice. Sometimes I want to tell you this too. We do come to show up, to show out, but sometimes silence is our secret to great strength. Don't feel pressured when you're asked a question to come out and have to give a response right away. Think before you speak. And that there is where your power comes in, because you're coming in with your feminine side and you're being quiet. One time someone asked me, what are you trying to do? Date them? Seduce them? Because my voice was very calm in my presentation. I said, no, I need not have to come in loud. I can hold the mic and speak calmly and speak with authority. That's who I am. Thank you.
Thank you, Miss Irving. That was wonderful. That was really wonderful in the sense of the suits. I remember that. I used to always wear my hair pulled back in a bun, just always, and wear dark colors. Voila, out loud, technicolor. That's what it's about. So, Jessica, let's hear your perspective in reference to how you are showing up and showing out by virtue of your lived experience.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like for me, being in IT, cybersecurity, it's definitely not a women-dominated field, but I do feel that we do bring that different perspective to the table. I am too one of those that I listen intently, because a lot of times when there's a problem arising and we're jumping to conclusions, we're not hearing all the details, all the ins and outs of what's actually going on. And one of the biggest things that I bring to the table is that I like to know all those ins and outs to help kind of bring ourselves out to the bigger picture so that we can kind of see what's really going on here. The other aspect too is just when you're listening, you're listening to each and every individual person that's involved in that situation. It's, work does not get done with just one sole person bringing all their authority, all their everything to the table. I mean, it truly is a collective, and we all bring strengths in that space. And so I feel like for my authentic self, I mean, I'm an empath at heart. I'm very compassionate of people, and I understand. We all come from different backgrounds, and so yeah, I feel like that's one of the biggest things that you can bring to the table is just being able to listen intently and yeah, bring in perspectives from other people.
All right, thank you. I'm gonna ask you guys one more question, and then since we've been going for about an hour, we're gonna shift to some questions that we received, sort of to break this up a little bit. So I said in my opening comments that one didn't have to be in a position that basically was a prescribed leadership role to be a leader, because you could look at someone out on the playground, I'm talking about children, and discern who's leading the charge with, the basketball or the kickball game, right? So with that, tell us about you leading in an environment without formal authority per se, and what did that yield you?
It's interesting in cybersecurity and IT operations. Sometimes we have competing goals. Cybersecurity, we're trying to make things more secure, and operations, they're just trying to keep the lights on. They want to keep their systems up and running, right? So we're always trying to strike this balance. And so one of the biggest things when I had first started, when cybersecurity had first started, I was going to CAB and pushing all these changes through and getting a lot of pushback quite a bit. But one of the biggest things I learned is that authority doesn't start by just pushing through, right? I realized that with all these conflicts, like we need to take things offline and we need to work through things. And one of the biggest things that really helped was helping them to understand why we're doing things. Like why we need to make things more secure, because one of the biggest things that we provide is availability. We keep buses and trains running. If there's a cybersecurity event, a ransomware event, then we're impacting our public. And so we need to strike up that balance. And so breaching that gap and bringing that understanding for why we're doing things really helps. And then it also too, when we're collectively working as a team, we're raising people up. I mean, we might be cybersecurity experts, but we're not IT application owners and system owners. Like, we need to be bringing them into the table as well. They may be thinking of something that we don't even know. And so we're also empowering our people, and collectively coming up with solutions. And so I think authority is not just led in that manner, it's working together as a team.
Are there any other panelists like to opine on that?
An example that I can share is early in my career when I was an instructional designer, and I worked on a team of about 5 other instructional designers. And this reminds me of like group projects in school, right? And a leader always emerges, even though everyone is on equal footing. And I think, being able to lead without authority can only be done if you're a trustworthy person. If people trust the direction that you're sharing, and if you actually have outcomes of doing a good job on a project. And so I think it's about building relationships. It's about being able to communicate well with people in a way that does not come off as authoritarian. And I would even argue that some people have influential authority without actually having that authority, and they may not even realize it because they're just a natural leader.
I just want to say, when you go and you read a room or you read an environment, there is someone that has the proverbial kiss the ring. That's the informal leader. They may not actually be the leader, but they are the person of great influence that can help lead or guide the way. They are providing what you mentioned, something trustworthiness, because it gives others psychological safety. When you are a leader, whether or not you have the title, if you're the person that gives individuals, the masses of people, the psychological safety to be themselves, to get the job done, that is who you need to pay attention to and to develop and push them forward. As a leader, leadership is shared. Again, I can't do the job by myself. I have to pull on those that are very important as part of the team, the partnership, and more important, the collaboration. Thank you.
Yeah, that's for certain. There's interdependencies. I say that often. I mean, who really cares who I am? I can't run this organization by myself. Our core business is service delivery, so that was a very important piece. All righty. So here we are with the questions that were pre-submitted.
Well, thank you, Deborah. We received several thoughtful questions in advance, and I will begin with our first question. How do we best celebrate women leaders in the workplace and highlight their achievements? And let's go ahead and start with Kelly.
I think we give females and women in our industry here at RTD an opportunity to share their story. Events such as today is one primary example of promoting women and allowing women that are either here in the audience or that are viewing to have that aha moment that they have great worth and value for RTD.
Yeah. I would say RTD is actually the first organization that I worked at where we showcase employees in general, let alone women. This bus behind us, interestingly enough, over the weekend I was driving downtown and I was stopped at the light, and what goes by is this bus. And I thought, oh, I know all these people. And, in that moment sitting at the light, I was like, what an awesome way to celebrate women, because their face is on this bus, and this bus drives all around the cities, all around the counties, and in our service area. And I can only imagine that, when our customers and just people who are out and about see the bus, that, they really think like, wow, these are, actual people who are doing the work at RTD.
I think recognition is a big piece, and obviously this bus behind us represents that. Being more involved in projects, I would say even just when milestones. I mean that recognition of those women involved and the and letting them know that their work is worth that what they're doing. So sometimes we kind of keep moving forward. There's always another task, another day, another thing going on, and so you can keep moving forward. But it's always good to stop and pause and recognize that work that we're doing.
I would round out and just say we have to be intentional and purposeful because we're unique, as I indicated. So it's not a cookie cutter approach. I would need to come to you, Jessica, and say, I appreciate your efforts. How best would you like to be recognized? I do that with my members of my leadership team, the ones that report directly to me. There are some individuals that don't want the public accolades, but are much more appreciative of me giving them a card saying that I really value your input, your wise counsel, you serving as a thought leader. So I think we have to recognize that we're all individually unique. And as we move forward, understand what it is that will bring them great joy in reference to having someone else acknowledge their contributions. But I would also amplify, Melissa, that we've been very intentional here, and I'd like to commend those within the Office of Civil Rights who have always stepped out and done some marvelous programs. I was going to give a shout out to Gisa at the end of the program, but having engaged with Gisa, and she's come to me and said, I want to do this, and it's like, let's go for it as we deal with our communications and engagement department when they have recognition events as well. It's us coming together, just being able to understand that this is a great opportunity as we look at all of us as employees, as contributors to the overarching mission of making lives better through connections, I believe is paramount to our collective success.
Absolutely. Individuality and approaching each situation or employee as they would like to be approached is excellent leadership. Question number 2. Is there something that stands out in your career as being particularly memorable or meaningful? And I will start with Jessica.
The biggest thing for me was, so obviously moving into cybersecurity was a very memorable, wonderful moment for me. I was really excited about this opportunity to change my career directory. I also would agree, so I started off as a cybersecurity operations manager here at RTD, and then a position opened up. It was a parallel position, so cybersecurity manager of architecture and engineering, and I was really honored to take on that position. It involved working on different cybersecurity programs, all the initiatives, and I just, the work that we've done has been so rewarding over the years. We've done so much in terms of just leveling up the security posture here. Being able to work with cross-directionally with different teams has been a great way of just learning how things work around here and all the incredible people. And so I'm really proud of our team and all that we've done. So I think that's just been very memorable for me, all the work that we've done.
I would say for me, as we look at something that's memorable, is investing in people. And when I learn of someone that I have had the opportunity to work alongside that has been promoted in different positions of leadership, and particularly women, that brings me God, I can't even speak, enormous pride. And cultivating those relationships, recognizing that you could be part of their kitchen cabinet as they go out and lead the world and do various things. It's rewarding. And I'll speak of something in particular. Melissa's familiar with COMTO, Conference of Minority Transportation Officials, and now that she's a member of the COMTO Colorado chapter, there are several women that I know at the national level who are going to be celebrated in April in Washington, D.C. as a woman that moves the nation. And these are people that I worked alongside. Some have been on my team, and being now having them in that same group with me, I can't even provide the adjectives that describe the joy that I possess. So that's me.
One of the things that that really excites me is, as we're doing our work in development and training, we have amazing learning and training specialists, and I just am very proud when another colleague at RTD comes up to me and says, "Hey, this person taught an amazing class, and I really learned it. I really learned a lot from them." And then I'm able to go back and share those accolades with them, and I think that that just helps drive us. I mean, we've had situations where we don't do this often, but occasionally we may have to switch out a trainer, and then the people in that cohort will say, no, 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 we want Mandy, or no, 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 we want to keep Vivian, because they really do develop relationships with employees here. And so that brings me a lot of pride and joy to be able to go back and share that information with them.
A memorable moment, I have more than one. My first one I would like to acknowledge is to be able to be part of a team, particularly when you have had a strong mentor, and that mentor you've lived life and you've come back full circle, and you're able to see the smile, see the nod of you did it. You paid attention and you've done it. So I see when your mentor sees you, that's a memorable moment for me. Also, much like Miss Deborah, you mentioned, when you're able to see someone that you've also pulled from, that you develop and you pull them forward. When I was able to actually develop someone and they were able to apply and get a position from being a specialist into a supervisor, that was a proud moment because I know that I had did my part of developing them and then bringing them along as well. So when you are in a position that you can actually help someone, I had a small business once. They were actually being impacted because of late payment. And when we finally got that check, close to a $500,000, I was so happy. It wasn't my money, but I felt like it was. So that's a memorable moment.
I will take a 500,000 if you have it laying around somewhere. All right, last question, ladies. Women have always been a part of transit. What can be done to encourage more women to enter and thrive in roles such as mechanics? What do you think are the barriers to entry in this field? And how can we better support and encourage women to pursue careers in transit? And Kelly, I'll give it back to you.
I think we should open up the conversation to share with women non-traditional roles and to also encourage them to be the pioneers and to lay the groundwork for those to come behind them. I know from my role in other agencies and just in the transit industry that sometimes as women we shy away from non-traditional roles. Oh, wait a minute, my nails, right? If you think about becoming a mechanic, girl, put some gloves on, go and get that money, okay? Because that is a good trade, and you can take it wherever you go. It's not limited to just any agency. It's something that and plus when you take your car to the mechanic, you're not going to be taken advantage of. So my role here at RTD would be to encourage our apprenticeship program to get more young ladies interested in it. But in order to get them interested in it, I need to give them the platform to become familiar with it. Thank you.
Much like Kelly's mentioned, I think that we just have to get the word out. I do believe that as leaders, we are responsible in our communities that we live in and that we're a part of to have these conversations, especially with young women, to let them know what their options are. Before I came to RTD, Ms. Johnson mentioned, a lot of people fall into transportation. That's actually exactly what happened to me. Had never considered it before. Um, but now having worked here for nearly 4 years, the jobs that are available here are very versatile. You have options to be on the operations side and be a mechanic, and work with your hands. You have the office, the opportunity to be on the business side. And so when I speak to young women, that's what I try to explain to them is that, it's not just driving a bus, but you could absolutely drive a bus if you wanted to, and we'll teach you how to drive that bus. So yeah, I think it's just us having a responsibility to share what we do, and in the transportation space and in the transit industry with young women.
Yeah, and I just also think women have come a long way over the years, and just in terms of what jobs we're taking comparatively to like even my mother and my grandmother and what they were doing. The opportunities are there. It's about seeking it out too. I do agree that the conversation and just the openness of possibilities of what women can do. Even being in technology, I feel like there's not a whole lot of women in this field. And one of the things that I did was identifying a mentor. Another thing that cybersecurity has done quite a bit is just we've brought on people for a day and kind of showed them around what we do in our department. And so I just think little opportunities like that of just being able to feel open to ask questions and learn about something, to even see if it's something that you're interested in doing. So I think the opportunities are there. It's just opening up that for them too.
And for me, I would say there's several things that we can do because oftentimes within the public transportation sphere, the average bear does not know about the myriad of careers that one can have within public transportation. As you look at different transit agencies around the country, there are some that have nurses on staff. There are, as we know, contract administrators. You can also have a resident physician on staff as we think about what's needed relative to ensuring that we have an individual that is healthy, wealthy, and wise that's taking out a vehicle, but more specific to the question of mechanic and or technician, it is going into the high schools doing early outreach. Not everybody is going to be on the journey to go to a four-year university. It is partnering with community colleges. So there's an understanding that there are these programs. Additionally, as I look over here at my colleagues through learning and development, there could be certain aspects where there is community college credit that's attributed. So somebody could come in here and be prepared to work and orient themselves to the notion of transit agency. And I think an opportunity would be to have a traveling roadshow when we have community events where we're going out into the community. So they can see individuals in those roles, because while we are limited in female mechanics, we do have them. And so we could utilize them to showcase, because one has to see something in order to believe that they can achieve it. And so with that as a backdrop, it's the outreach and engagement that'll be paramount into showcasing the possibilities in reference to the opportunities that are here at the agency.
Absolutely. Representation matters. If I see someone else do it, I can do it too. So thank you, ladies, for answering the questions from the people that could not be here today. And I will turn it back over to Deborah.
Thank you so much, Tamika. Appreciate it. So as we round out, we're going to be closing out in a moment, and I'll take some questions from the audience, should there be any. But wanted to really focus on this here. We were talking about in our responses about mentorship earlier, just by virtue of the responses that have been shared by the panel. And as we think about it in the sense of, you may have been impactful for someone else, but how is mentorship? And I'm going to basically say mentorship or sponsorship, because oftentimes people don't know the difference. So I will ground the audience in the difference between mentorship and sponsorship. Mentorship is somebody who you can go to and seek guidance and advice in perhaps career direction. A sponsor is somebody else. A sponsor is somebody that knows of you and your skills, knowledge, and abilities, and will be able to be an advocate for you when you're not in the room. And that's often important when you're in an environment and somebody's like, well, I would really like to hire a woman, and let's put that DEI B mess to the side. And I say mess in the sense that that's the only way we can get a job. That's not it. But what I mean is that I've been looking all around. How might I find this person? That sponsor will say, oh, I know Erin. She'd be fabulous for the position. She has these credentials. She has this level of experience. So with that as your backdrop, tell me about a moment when someone saw that potential in you before you saw it in yourself, be it a sponsor or be it a mentor. Who wants to go? Well, you got the
I'll go.
mic. Go ahead.
I got the mic. Okay, here we go with the smooth voice.
Quiet
Um,
storm.
I have I have had that moment, and I think it's still happening. I believe that I have a very strong sponsor, an individual that had actually nurtured me, mentored me, and now sponsors me. I am confident that this individual will speak of my name in a room where I'm not present if there is an opportunity. That for me has been it's been critical in my development and also my promotion, because the confidence I've talked about confidence in this conversation, but not like I'm going to now. The confidence that you have when you have individuals that are willing to mention your name and you're not in the room, and then they say, or you hear from the person whom they spoke to about you, it moves the earth, because you're like, wow, really? I was that important. And they have that vote of confidence for me. So I too look to do the same. In rooms where people that I know their ability, I want to be able to, and I will mention their name and what they can do. I'm always open for mentoring because I've been mentored. And that their experience is so rewarding and is so important, so that you know who to go to help you chart chart your path. That has been extremely important to me, and not only just in my career, but also in my industry, because our industry is about partnering and also relationships. Thank you.
The truth is, I would not be where I am in my career had I not had mentors and sponsors to speak on behalf of me, and mentors to coach me and give me ideas about things. I know not too long ago, probably about a year ago, a mentor of mine started sharing about executive presence with me. And I was like, what is that? And, she began to explain to me what it is and how I can become more skilled in it. And it's something that I've been practicing. And so, yeah, I think that having having had mentors and having had sponsors also creates a huge response. I feel that I have a huge responsibility to also do the same for other women, and that we need to, be cheerleaders of other women, and recognize their skills and their abilities. Um, and I also want to highlight the importance that being a mentor, being a sponsor, or having one can be formal or informal. And what I mean by that is I have mentors that don't even know they're my mentors. And it's because I watch how they carry themselves, I watch how they operate, I watch how they conduct business, and I learn from that. So it's definitely important. It's important for women, and sometimes conversations about conversations about how women get along or don't get along often come up. But the truth of the matter is, we are our best champions for each other.
Before you pass the mic, you were talking about executive presence, but for those that may be unfamiliar, you didn't expound.
Oh, yes. So executive presence basically is having the skills of like how you present yourself, how you talk in formal settings, one of my biggest things was I never really considered myself a good speaker. I say a lot. I'm working on that too. But yeah, it's a lot to do with how you carry yourself. And I don't, you don't have to always talk fast and be the loudest person in the room to convey your thoughts and your ideas. And so, yeah, that's what executive presence is.
Thank you for sharing.
For me, mentorship and sponsorship and just really the people that have touched my life all throughout my career have really shaped where I've been able to go in my life. I sometimes it's also too just about opportunity. Sometimes you're just in a conversation with someone and you're like, oh, I'm really interested into getting into this space, and they're like, well, hey, why don't you join me at a networking event? And then that spawns, me going to that networking event, every month. And then I'm learning about other networking events where I can meet other people. And then too, just, people being able to take you under their wing and teach you. I mentioned on my Fridays off, when I was working, I was learning about IT and learning about systems and learning about cybersecurity and learning just how things work. And so I definitely would not be where I am today. I mean, I also had a team take a chance on me without having the exact skill sets to be able to perform the job. I mean, I had to be able to learn, I had to get a certification. There was contingencies on my job. But, I think it's those people that are extending a hand to you to help out. And it's really quite a beautiful thing, and I'm very thankful for that.
Thank you. That's what it's all about. We have to step back and oftentimes reflect on what has come our way and the gratitude that we express in reference to receiving those gifts that are oftentimes not expected, but well received because they help shape who and whose we are. And I think that is very prevalent as we evolve as individuals, more importantly. I wouldn't say more importantly, I said in the reverse, as we evolve as leaders, but more importantly as people. So with this juncture, do we have any questions from the audience? Tamika will be coming around with the microphone so we can hear you.
So my name is Erin Grover. I'm the learning administrator here at RTD. My question for the four of you is thinking back to your young self. So 17, 18, you're on the precipice of adulthood, new adventure. Maybe you're graduating high school or starting college. What is the one piece of advice, thinking back to who you were back then and who you are now? What is the one thing you would, as the woman you are today, what would you tell that young woman to continue doing, to stop doing? How would you lead her to become the person that you are?
Erin, thank you for that question. We have a mind meld because I was going to ask that of the panel. But with that being said, for me, is that I am enough. We heard earlier conversations about how we thought we had to show up in a room, or Melissa indicated she had to shrink herself. Kelly talked about how wearing a pinstripe suit with a white blouse may have a tie or have a brooch, so we would look more man-like in our presence just by virtue of not having other women around. And so recognizing that you are the best version of anybody that you can be, because that is uniquely yourself. So succinctly, I would say, I am enough.
I think I would tell Kelly, 18-year-old, this is going to be a ride. Find your passion and enjoy it. Find your passion. My passion has changed over the years, not the core of it, but how I achieve it. So if I were to talk to, because I had a spirit when I was 17 and 18, I'm in it still, but it's just been refined. Take that, because it's part of what's in my heart and what was in my gut. And it was really to give back. Because remember, I said early on, I knew I wanted to be a public administrator. Now I'm in that, I'm living it, and I want to be the best public administrator I can possibly be. And I wanted to be that at 17, but now I know how I'm administrating small business programs, civil rights, okay? That's my passion. And that's why I can wake up in the morning and I can say, okay, let me put on these cowhide shoes and go on in there and get the work done. Hold on.
I would say to my younger self and to teenage girls is do the thing. Do the thing that's in your heart that you want to do. Maybe you want to go to college. Maybe you want to go to trade school. Maybe you want to start your own business. Whatever that thing is, just step out and try it and do it, because you don't want to have any regrets in not having at least, at the very least, tried the thing that you have been thinking about probably for years. So, yep, that's my advice. Do the thing.
My advice would be to don't let fear stop you from advancing in life. Even if something comes up and you're just like, oh, this feels scary. I don't know if I can go into this job interview. I don't have the skill sets for it. You know, you're not going to grow until you push those edges. You have to. It's how I've been able to get to where I am today, and I'm sure most of the women up here would say something similar. Like, you have to face fear in the face, and I think one of the biggest things that I hold on to that gets me through fear is curiosity. Like, what is it about this that is scary? I mean, can I just show up and take some deep breaths? Can I just start? Can I just, get there? So that's one of the biggest things I would recommend, or my advice.
Thank you. Are there any other questions? Okay, I'm going to ask one more of the panel, and then we will round this out. So, considering where we are here at the Regional Transportation District, here at District Shops, sitting in the paint bays, if a young woman were considering a career in public transport, what would you want her to know? What advice would you give?
I think the biggest thing about public transportation is just it's a very rewarding field. The fact that we move people, of all different classes. It doesn't matter your race, how much you're making. It's a really rewarding place to work. There's also just a wider range of jobs here. It's not just buses and people behind them moving them. There's also people in IT, cybersecurity. There's finance. There's a whole other realm of it, and there's really possibilities anywhere. And if there's certain jobs you're interested in, there's people that you can reach out to and learn about those jobs. I just feel like there's a big opportunity here.
I would say give transportation a chance. That's what I did. Again, not knowing what I was walking into, but I found that this has been one of the most rewarding jobs. There's always something going on. One of my biggest learning curves was working for a 24/7 company and realizing, oh, the day doesn't necessarily end at 4 or 5 o'clock. And there are things that come up that need to be addressed, and when they do, we huddle together and figure it out in our various teams. But it's a very rewarding experience, and just by the virtue of working in public service, you are giving back to your community. You're giving back to this city. You're giving back to the surrounding counties and to this state.
I like to share with a young person, a young lady, a story, and I'll make it quick, the microwave version. Yesterday we had graduation. I saw 3 generations. I saw a mother of a daughter who had 2 daughters. The mother of the daughter is the young lady that had just graduated to become an operator. I say that because I was in the room to greet. For those 2 young girls, those young ladies saw a world of opportunity. You had a female woman CEO. Her mother became bus operator. I was a director for Civil Rights Division. The manager of, I think it was Boulder location is where she would work out of. There were so many positive women in the room to show an example. Come on aboard. This is what I would tell her. Hey, little mama, come on aboard. Let me take you on a ride and show you where your life can go. You can be limitless. Opportunity is all over the place, and it's rolling on a bus or it's going down a rail. We have opportunities for you, and you are welcomed here to be who you are, just as beautiful as you are. That's what I would tell her.
Well, thank you for that, Kelly, because basically we each have an opportunity to create her story, right? And as we talk about her story, there would be no American history without her story, right? And so throughout the past hour and a half, we have seen prime examples of courage, tenacity, dedication, agility, and commitment overarchingly to being of service to others. I think what we have also learned is that nobody's path is predetermined. And as we want to use metaphors relative to what we're doing here, I should say analogies, that when you're driving down a road, you can hit a roadblock or a detour. You have to navigate that, and you'll eventually get back on track, even if you make a wrong turn. Because one thing about life is this, and I give credit to Gilda Radner for this quote: life is nothing but delicious ambiguity. And you have to be willing to step out and embrace it and calm your fears. Because when I think about fear as an acronym, it's more or less about face everything and rise. Because when you have those uncomfortable moments, that's what enables you to grow and be a better version of yourself. So in reference to all these nuggets, I say to each of you, reflect on what you bring each and every day to yourself to be the best version of you possibly can, and share those nuggets with others, because we are going to be better together. I would like to commend Gisa Simmons for leaning in, creating this space, and to the Office of Civil Rights for pitching in and making this come to fruition. Undoubtedly, there are people behind the scenes which I may not know of, but please know the only reason I am not calling you out is because I don't know your name, but recognizing I know it takes the village, and oftentimes it takes a transit agency. So thank you to our audiovisual team for facilities maintenance who set up the stage, people in vehicle maintenance that were able to position the bus. It's all about RTD. And so I would like to express my gratitude for having this opportunity to sit on this stage and be part of this dynamic conversation. It humbles me each and every day, whereby I get to be a part of a team that is made up of remarkable individuals who give of themselves so unselfishly. It's not lost on me. And I would not be able to do anything in this organization without people, without our customers, without all of us that comprise this agency, because we're people moving people. And without our employees, without our customers, there's no need for me. So thank you, thank you, thank you for making lives better through connections each and every day. And I wish you a wonderful Wednesday, and enjoy the rest of Women's History Month that's been designated, but we're women every day and every month, and that's not going to change. So with that, thank you for tuning in, and wish you all the best.